Welcome to Bigbox.
Alright, hello and welcome back everybody. It's Aces back with another update video. This time I'm implementing a cool new feature that I call Retromode. Ooh, so what this essentially is that I was kind of scrolling through looking at some of the sections here. All of the mid-era 3D low-res consoles like the PlayStation, PlayStation 2, the N64, Dreamcast, some of those, 3D but low-res systems, they're all being upscaled. They're all getting the anti-aliasing, they're all getting all these nice features applied over them. And, that's fantastic. I love upscaling, of course, just like anybody else would. But sometimes I feel like, you want to go back to making it look like it used to look like, at least a little bit more mimic some of the old features of it here. And the way I see some people approach this is I see normally it's like PlayStation 1, because I think that one benefits a lot from having something that's a little bit more of a retro original console mode. But it'll be like an entire section. So like PlayStation will have a totally duplicated wheel, and then it'll be like this wheel is specifically run with DuckStation that upscales all the games. And then there'll be another, total separate wheel that'll be about running it in a normal mode. And I'm like, I love that concept. I just, I wonder how I could implement that into this sort of a setup here. Then I'm like, okay, well, essentially that's just like a configuration swap. If you have your RetroArch configured, it creates a per system based console override. So like the PS2 can have an override of its, specific emulation settings. And then all it really takes is to take that configuration file as it is, because everything's sort of matching up with everything, and to just swap it in for the one that I normally use. So yeah, that's essentially what I've sort of done here. So at the description here, there should be the script that I use to do a file swap, basically what I wrote out here and how it sort of works. You can take the same script, you can use it in your own setups, even you can do the same thing I have here to kind of swap into like different configurations. But it's just like a script that, swaps files essentially, so you can use it for any configuration or anything that you would like to do in your setup that might require, swapping a configuration file, right? So it's really cool the way it's implemented here though, because I can still have access to all the different types of ways to play my games. So like with the X input, the D input, and you're doing it right in a menu. So actually, let me start explaining how it works. So first we'll start off with one of the ones that really benefit a lot, I think, is PlayStation. So we're going to go under All Games. And I think Silent Hill is always a really good example of this. So let's see here. There it is. So, with the way that RetroArch is right now, is that it upscales everything nicely. It removes the wobbliness of the polygons, and it just kind of presents it in a nice way, upscaled. And that's what the default is for play. So if you click play right now, it's going to be the upscaled version. That still looks nice. So instead of showing that here right off the bat, I'll explain how the retro mode works. So we're going to be leveraging the additional apps and versions here. There's going to be two options that we can pick, retro mode and upscaled. The way that I have it worked into the setup here is that if you pick retro mode here, it will only run the next game in any fashion that you want to run it in. So D input, X input, 6-button controller. You can run any game, and the next run of the game will be in retro mode. So let me run this now. So now what it's doing is basically doing the configuration swap that I mentioned. So it's priming the emulator. So I have RetroArch configured in many ways. So what the script's doing is that it's swapping the configuration file for the PlayStation Swan Station in all three directories at the same time when I run that retro script. So now that's why no matter which one of these I pick, it'll go ahead and still run in that retro mode. So a cool way to show this would be the D input. So right now I'm using the Pro 2 controller. This is X input. We want to swap over to the D input here. That would be the PS5 controller. So on this window with Launch With, you're able to actually just start holding down the start button to power down controllers. Plus we can listen to the Silent Hill soundtrack in the background. And then now we just go ahead and pop in a D input, and let's go ahead and launch. Oops, press the... Look here, let me do it there. It's just that I think the accept button swapped in the menu there when it's in the D input. So it's launching here now, and it'll still be in what essentially this is like no upscaling, everything emulating the PlayStation as accurately as possible, as if it were a PlayStation here, without any upscaling, without anything fancy applied to it, just nice and clean. And then we're going to be controlling it with the D input here. I mean, I suppose they're still violent and disturbing. So what we do is we just kind of tag in, and then the biggest difference that you'll see is the dithering effect right from the start, and it's going to be there. I think that's one of the biggest things that you miss if you don't have like a cool retro mode like this. There you go. So, and this effect too, like the way it kind of swooshes his hands there. Like you don't really get that when you start going into the upscaling as well. And you can see here, you know, it's the old school Silent Hill, you know, there's no upscaling, it's like you're playing on the PlayStation. And D input, like I mentioned. So now we just have to quit out of this here. Now, the interesting thing about this setup here is that when we quit, it will automatically put the configuration back to the way it was before. Now, because of that, if I just click play now, we should be going straight into RetroArch, and, well, I guess I should have picked the D input because the X input's actually the default if we're just clicking play. But what we can do here then is just quit out of this here. And then we'll grab the X input controller. And you can use it with this Elite here. Then we're just going to resume. Actually, hey, that was a cool way to show that the controllers are able to kind of be swapped in and out of the configuration. And, you know, it's not really a pain or a hassle or anything. So. And yeah, so we're going to be back at the violent disturbing images. So again, when you click play, the default is always RetroArch upscaled X input. You can use that same logic for any of the systems that I have in the setup here. So if I was going to do D input again for upscaled, I would go under Launch With D input. But you can tell already you see it's upscaling because the shaders are trying to adapt. Silent Hill is actually just that one start menu that's kind of wonky, but there's another reason why you may not want to upscale, right? Or you may not want to have that little bit of wonkiness. But you can see here again, now it's all upscaled, it looks a little bit different. There's not going to be any dithering anymore. And with the upscaling, the way I like to make it a little bit more differentiated is the fact that it doesn't have the PlayStation 1 wobbliness, the wobbliness. So that's all kind of taken off. And I think this kind of approach works well because if you're going to be upscaling, you're going to be probably wanting to play it in the best presentation possible. So why not make sure that the upscaled version is the one that kind of emulates that experience the best? And if you're going to be wanting to go ahead and not do upscaling, well, I would imagine you would probably want to just go ahead and run the original system as it originally was, which is what the retro mode accomplishes. You're able to do it emulating all the system-specific configuration, the way it would have been then. Yeah, so let's go ahead and quit out of this. And the other thing that you could do, because we have the retro mode now, is you can consider it like, if I ever take this and put it into maybe more of a like a lower end system, or I take the setup and I just do something to it, you can consider like the retro mode as like the, I don't know, like the low spec mode, I guess, if you were thinking about it that way. So I think it's kind of nifty that I can do something like that. I guess it's all about the way you can experience the setup. So, and the fact that it does it afterwards, it does the cleanup. So to speak towards that, the script is really useful if you have all your ROM sets already sort of implemented. Like, I'm done PlayStation and I'm done N64 and I don't really need to add any more. Because the way it does the cleanup, essentially, and the way it works in this setup, is that LaunchBox is a way to run before and run after. That's what kind of like the launch with area there does. So because you're able to go ahead and do all these different additional apps and versions, what Retromode is doing is that it's running when you press the button. Like Retromode in this selection doesn't do anything anywhere until you actually click it here, where it then runs an exe file, my script that I'll be having here, cleans up the configuration, and yeah, and then it just basically puts you back in the menu. So that's why it's basically primed. And at that point, the good thing about the way the script is set up is that you don't have to worry about it anymore. Because at the next run, every section has it set up that when you're done running the game itself, it will run an exe file. And that exe file copies back the upscaled configuration, which is why no matter what game you pick here, no matter what input you select, it doesn't matter, because the way that LaunchBox looks at it, it's like, okay, you're done playing Ace Combat 3. Oh, well, now I have to run this exe file. What does this exe file do? Well, it cleans up the configuration and puts it back to upscaled. So, you know, that's why every section is kind of set up like that. So now let me go ahead and jump into like PlayStation 2. It'll be the same sort of a concept. Also, when I was going through and thinking of this and then getting this all set up, I was actually cleaning up all the different configuration files and the emulation settings and everything. So it's actually looks pretty good now too. I don't know what would be probably the best version to show for upscaling. Oh, I know what would probably be good, like something like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, because if you're upscaling something like that, you'll probably notice that it has issues. At least I think I remember. Well, we'll find out here in a second. So I'm still using X input. So what we'll do for this one here now. Does that have music? Oh, I want to be taken for a ride, but I guess it's not going to be happening. So we'll go ahead and do the additional apps and versions. And it's the same approach again. So retro mode and upscaled. Same sort of configuration, same script. Just this time it's going to be working with the LCPS2 or whatever the the actual emulator that is inside here that it was. So we just run retro mode. It's going to be priming the next run. And even though worst comes to worst, somebody runs this and then quits out of the menu and then just doesn't come back to it. I mean, next time you run a PlayStation 2 game, it'll be in original mode, and then you quit and it'll just be reset right back anyway. So no harm, no foul, really. And then we can do launch with. Let's try maybe the 6-button controllers this time. I mean, 6-button controllers are in this setup here mostly because the way that they do their third buttons, like the third face buttons, which I'll show here. Hopefully it comes out in the camera. I got it up real close. But the way that they kind of work, yeah, okay, so focus. These like Z and C buttons and like these L and R's, they're sort of like mirrored, or there's something funky about these. So when you're trying to do them in RetroArch and you're trying to like do like a regular like a 8-bit DOE would be, they don't map properly. So you can't use the same configuration because then the Z and the C, they're just in different locations and they're just not mapped properly. It's just really funky. So that's why the 6-button controllers all need to have like their own section. And then what I found from that is that most 6-button controllers, like let's say like these Hori fight sticks I keep talking about, but I don't think I've ever actually shown yet, or used maybe. But like this also is like a PlayStation face button Hori stick. It's got like R1, R2. This one just says Z and C. But essentially, these two controllers are the same mapping, like these two, these two, and these two, these two. And I'm assuming, well, actually, no, they're not because 8-bit DOE and this is a Hori, so they're not even from the same company. But I guess they just take that same logic and maybe they just apply it to the same sort of things. But that's the reasoning around why that is. Yeah, so you can see here, we can go under like arcade mode. And then we'll just whatever, you know, get in here. So, there we go. And so you're able to go ahead and play with it looking kind of sort of, well, it is like the PlayStation 2 version would be as if you were playing on a PlayStation 2 on your setup. And now what we're going to do is we're going to quit. And like I mentioned, what's happening here is the script is now going to be run to clean up everything. So let's tag out that controller now, and let's tag back in the D input. So because the script is now run after the game has been done and it's cleaned up all the files, we can just click play. This time we're going to go launch with because I want to try the D input. It's now going to be the upscaled version. Yeah. And you'll see that with the upscaled version there's going to be a little bit of like an upscaling issue. Oop. So I think with this, right, I think I forgot to add the extension into the cache manager. I'll probably fix that right after this actually. But what I'll do is run it in the X input mode, because that one probably still has it in the right setup there. There you go, that's tagged out. So let's try the X input. And so the other thing about like the cache managers and things like that, you actually have to add the extension into each time that you add the emulator in RetroArch. So, and that's why it's loading up fine here now. That's why I'll fix it right after this. So you have to like go into the plugins, bring up the cache manager plugin. I think it's what that is. Then inside that, you have to add RetroArch, but then it's not just RetroArch, you have to add this core from RetroArch, and then you have to add the specifics for the file extensions to it. Because I have so many configurations, sometimes you might lose track of one or two. So there you go, there's a little bit of behind the scenes information about that. But so now what you'll see here is it's all upscale again. So this part looks great. And it takes you off guard too, because you're like, oh wow, look at those sprites. They look great, you know? Oh, it's so, can't wait to jump back in. But once you're going to be inside this, you'll see that there's some upscaling issues. The lines aren't aligned. It's slight, but it's there. But it's sort of why like having something that eliminates the upscaling and just runs it how the console originally would look has a lot of benefits. So we'll quit out of that here. yeah, let's show this in another section here of where it's useful. So I used it in PS1, PS2. What else did I use it in? Xbox, I wasn't able to because it doesn't use RetroArch. I don't think there's a RetroArch core for it yet. I think there was something else I was supposed to mention about PlayStation 2. Oh, well, I'm sure it'll come back to me here. But for now, what we'll do is go into the N64. The N64 was another interesting one. I totally changed its emulation core inside RetroArch. I think there's like, I think it's Angry Lion. I'm pretty sure it's Angry Lion, but it's so much better than Parallele, I think it is. Or it's the other way around. I don't know which way I have it, but I remember that one has much better ability to upscale higher, but once I switched over to, I think it was like the Lion core, oh man, it just works out better. But same sort of concept here. We can run Retromode. It'll go ahead and do the configuration swaps. And then while we're doing that here, I'll go ahead and do this on like the N64 controller to show that you're able to go ahead and do something nifty like that too. So with this one I have to just tag it in. So there we go. Once that should be in, should be just like that. Then we go under Launch With, N64 controller. And yeah, we'll be able to do Retromode, N64 style. But yeah, like the emulator is just, I don't know, it's just so much easier to set up. Just everything looks so much better. It's also why I think I kept seeing everybody else's videos. I'm pretty sure this is probably like everybody else's normal setup. It's like it gets new to me. But every damn time I saw somebody set up on like their N64 on YouTube, and then I would like look at their emulation, and I'm like, man, it just looks so much better. Like there's no like upscaling artifacts. It just looks really good. And I'm like, well, what the hell are you guys doing to get that sort of a look? And I guess it was just because I was focused for whatever reason using the wrong core. And yeah, so I don't know. So this is like the retro mode. You can see it's all original N64 type emulation. This is as original to the console specific settings as you can get. And then what we do is we quit. And yeah, I mean technically you just have to press enter again, because I think that's what I probably was attempting to think of doing back when in the PlayStation section there with doing the D input. We just press enter and it'll be into the upscaled version now. Same concept again, swapping back. Right, I think the biggest thing about having a ROM set that's complete is because you don't want your ROMs to keep changing, right? Here, I'll speak towards that after it gets quieter maybe. But just gonna jump into 1080.
Kensuke Kimachi versus Licky Winterbourne. Ready? Go!
And there you go. So you can see now it's upscaled. It's looking really good. And there's just no issues with any type of misalignment. And that goes for any of the games that you'll be trying, like Killer Instinct, which actually I'll... You know what? It warrants enough to kind of show one more game with this setup. Actually, and I'm going to show what core it is. Like, I can't just keep talking about this mysterious core. But again, this is just like, I'm sure, news to me. It's just interesting to me. I'm sure everyone else's setups already sort of has this, but... let's go under N64 controller. And let's just get in. Yes, yes. But yeah, like, no, it's upscaled, there's no misalignment or anything, sprites look great. And away you go. But yeah, and so let's find out what chord this is. Oh, maybe it is the parallel line. It's the other way around. So it's the angry lion. Pretty sure anyway it's the angry lion. Oh no, it's the glide! Oh, I'm sorry, angry lion. I gave wrong hate. So I used to use glide on 64. I'm sure I read everywhere. I was reading places that's like, that's the one. Oh, no. Parallele. That's the one. Yeah, so then we just go ahead and quit out of this, and then we can get the N64 thing out of the setup. Those are just my opinions about the emulator. I mean, like, maybe there's some sort of crazy good reasoning and like configuration file that I'm just not, I haven't been exposed to. That kind of speaks towards that. But here, we're gonna do is tag back in the X input. What's another section where this is good for? GameCube, I don't think I showed that yet, so let's show that working. I think it has another... I was thinking if there was like a really good specific game that I was thinking of. It sort of shows the concept. Well, you know what? Maybe like Resident Evil, something that has like a 2D, 3D type effect to it. Let's try that. So, Resident Evil 0? Yeah, let's try 0. So what we're going to do here, and this is also how LaunchBox, what I mentioned about like groupings of games, so you can have the 2 discs versions, but it just kind of groups them up into one, so you don't have that, you know, Resident Evil 01, Resident Evil 02. And then you're done. So then we just go launch with and we pick. Again, if I just go place X input, and since we have an X input controller, we'll go ahead and just press X, or press A. And this will be back to original GameCube, you know, no upscaling, no speed enhancements, no anything of any type of real enhancements. Tried to not do anti-aliasing or anything like that. New game, press start.
Resident Evil.
Hopefully it kind of jumps into the game quickly so you can kind of see the difference between a 3D model and the background. Oh, thank you for at least letting me skip the intro. I think I remember there being some Resident Evils that just lock you in. But see, I guess this has a pretty cool, you know, kind of look to it. Like, it's like some warmness to it, having the low resolution look, the low poly look. And I think it's really cool to have that ability to, you know, just select a game, select the controller type really quickly from the menu without being convoluted with too many modes and things. But having that ROM set up specifically because you're going to be adding the file to the end of everything. That's I was going to speak to the end here, right? So with the ROM sets being set, because you don't want to add another ROM later and then forget to add the script that cleans up the Retromode, or to make sure that the Retromode is listed in the additional apps or launch widths. That's kind of why you want to make sure that your ROM set's done, more or less, or if it's not, you just remember to add the files after. But then you just womp them, you're done, and then you don't have to think about it. So that's kind of like the reasoning behind that here too, about when's a good time to start doing it to your configuration and your setup. It's kind of cool with the setup here because not only do you have like the different controller options, the different retro mode options.
This is Officer Chambers from Stars Bravo team. Please,
Oh, let me see if I can get into the game really quick. There we go. So you can quit out of that here. And that's just kind of like the power of you know, LaunchBox, being able to kind of like, you know, configure and get this all sort of used. I think I might be leveraging some of this in a different way than maybe it was intended. I think I don't even know, but I don't know. It seems to work out pretty well. So hey, if it works, right? So now if we click on play, it's going to do the upscaled version, like I mentioned, X input by default. If you're not able to edit video, you gotta keep repeating the same stuff to kill dead air, right? Maybe one day I'll start learning how to edit a little bit better. But now we're gonna be loading in here. Everything's gonna be nicely upscaled. I mean, this is normal scale. But yes. And the other cool thing about this is because it's separated like this here too, with the configurations being swapped, is that if you have save files, right, like it's going to be using the same mode that you're in. Like I would assume if you're going to be playing like the GameCube and you play a game like Resident Evil, you've made your choice if you want to use it. Oh, with a GameCube controller, which is what I'll show here really quick too. If you want to, if you made that choice, you're probably going to want to stick to it. So if you're doing retro mode though, you can swap back and forth. So like if you're going to be, wanting to be vested in Resident Evil 0 with the GameCube controller, you want to do retro mode, great. You're playing, you do your save, and you're like, okay, well maybe at this point I want to go back to upscaling, still use my same save file. Yeah, it's still fine because then you can still select the same controller mode, which is the same, Xbox or the same RetroArch folder. Which means you're able to just, resume now in upscaled mode with your same save file, so you can kind of like go back and forth between the two. So it's kind of like an intended bonus. Of course, this is exactly how I thought of it out, This is how it worked out. So I think that's kind of like a nifty little thing to note. And then if for whatever reason none of this floats your boat, and
This is often
maybe the core in RetroArch. Well, let me just quit out of this. It's gonna play for a little bit, but I'll play later. So we quit out of that. We're like, oh man, it still doesn't look right in either one of those. Well, we can just go launch with, and then we have it set up in Dolphin. So we can just do Bex input. Now this won't have the same save file. Oh, I mean, technically, I guess I could figure out some way to do the same script exe file. I mean, if it's maybe like tossing some folders instead of like files, or maybe if it's like searching for some wildcards for save files and then just whopping them into multiple directories at the end. You could probably, map out something that handles this in the background, sort of like a spider web, which I might do sometime. I mean, I feel like passing the time. Tag in
0.
And now you'll be doing it in Dolphin. So the same sort of concept will be for like Dreamcast also, which that's another one I'll show after this here too. It's also good to show all the systems that I set up here for, in case you were wondering about, which ones might be, might be good for. This one's more widescreen. I think also the reason why I haven't gone back and changed this is, it just gives you another way to present it. I mean, like if there really is such a limited amount of games that would have a problem maybe with RetroArch, I think that like maybe if you're going to be using Dolphin, you might want to be playing a game that is a little bit more widescreen or something along those lines. But it's as simple as coming back to, maybe I'll go back to Dolphin and it's just a configuration file, right? So I'll just change it to be presented at 4x3, save the configuration, and then since everything just kind of still gets swapped out, once one's changed, they'll just continue using it in the same sort of a method. It's kind of cool. So we quit. This doesn't do any type of cleanup after, because there's nothing to do with Dolphin. So that's sort of the reasoning behind that. And then let's try another one that we did that for. I think, I already considered Wii, like, it's nice widescreen, it was already HD pretty much, and like, leave it be, I don't think there's no point of this type of retro mode. So let's try, take a look at Dreamcast. I'll try like something like classic Sonic or something. So yeah, let's just do Sonic Adventure. So what we'll do here is additional apps and versions. Same concept, retro mode, run it, it's doing its swaps. Gets everything ready for you. Then let's do launch with Redream, of course, that's the other one if you want to go ahead and start doing some other way, but we have an X input controller. Where do I have? Actually, you can use either one. So let's go play. I just don't know which one would be player one technically in this case here. I mean, I guess it might be RetroArch just womping whichever one it chooses. Could be either like the Elite or this one is player one. I don't know if it has some sort of a priority to it or not, but yeah. I guess we'll see. And so again, this is going to be emulating the Dreamcast at the most basic level. No upscaling, nothing like that. Sometimes it's kind of cool for, I think it actually was a little bit cooler in Sonic because, like, I think it uses a little bit of like a 2D element to it.
Select a memory card.
So it looks like it actually walked in.
Select a file.
Let's player one. Yeah, let's just get in.
Select a character.
Let's get him!
There we go, jumping in. But you can already tell it's a little bit lower res, but it almost kind of fits the aesthetic. Like, I don't know, like, these graphics are just so simple that having that, I'll call it warmness again, I guess, of, you know, the low jagginess is it's nice, you know? Kind of like chicken soup for the soul. And then see like like the background, the space
this
there, that's all kind of a little bit of like a 2D effect in the back there. I think a little bit more of the city here will be in 2D.
What's up?
I'll try to speak up a little bit louder because it sounds really loud here even in my ears. But hopefully this comes through in the recording for once. I'm trying to get my volume balanced a little bit better. But yeah, I think there's just a certain warmness to
You are
this.
completely surrounded!
So now we just
Surrender!
quit. And again, when you quit, it runs the script swap. So if we do play, and then it's going to be going and doing it in upscale now because it's already swapped back the configuration file.
Select a file. Select a character.
Let's get him!
Yeah, looking good. And like this has its place. And that's why I think this is like a pretty valid way to go ahead and start, you know, implementing it into a setup and reasoning behind it. Because this has its merits too. It looks great, it's sharp, you can start seeing the textures a lot better, you know.
Oh yeah! This is happening!
Oh yeah. But it's already happened. And we get really loud at that point, so we're gonna try to move on. But then in the same... Oh, no, I did it. Oh, good. Well, thank you. Thank you, LaunchBox. Because I didn't intend to run it again. Because what I wanted to do is actually run Retream and just kind of show that Retream will go ahead and now... Same way. I changed the Dreamcast since I think the last time also. I did a quick playthrough. It's no longer 16 by 9. It's 4 by 3. So if you're going to be in this... You know, thinking back on the GameCube, or whatever that last one was, yeah, with Resident Evil, like that weird widescreen, maybe I will go ahead and change that back to 4:3 and just force it. I think it kind of irritated me a little bit now thinking back to it. But, yeah, we don't even use Dolphin anymore, so what difference is that thing? So we go ahead and...
Select a character.
Let's get him!
And we can also, I guess, compare the recording, the differences, and how it looks in the different emulators. But I think the ease of being able to access all these different ways of playing these games is pretty nifty, just to kind of experience it like that. But yeah, you can see it looks sharper. This one doesn't have the shaders from RetroArch, so maybe it's coming through a little bit clearer because it doesn't have that grid effect applied. Well, grid effect, it's like a CRT mask. But like, it doesn't have that as movable. Well, it's not movable because it's not on here, but
Oh yeah! This is happening!
But yeah, so and it just gives you that choice, I guess, you know, it's kind of cool. And because it, you know, cleans itself up after, you don't really have to worry about what setting it's at, right? So you just move on. The Saturn was always Retromode, I guess, because the emulator, the best one in the RetroArch core, I think, is just one that runs it at, you know, native resolution. But it's the best, and I just went through and I kind of just made sure all the settings are nice, but not much to really show for that one. PlayStation I showed, PlayStation 2 showed. Yeah, then I think that is all of them that I found it applicable for. For now? Yeah. So like I mentioned, I'll go ahead and probably put in the description here a link to the script that I use. I'll try to leave it like a little bit, it's an interpretation, like I'll probably be like insert ROM name here, you know, in brackets. So just keep that in mind, you know, like this is where your file name would go, this is where your folder, you know, would go. But I think it's a little bit commented and stuff, and it should be, I mean, if you're getting into the point where you want to like do something like this, I'm going to assume that you can probably read through what the script's doing fairly easily. So I won't go into too many details, but it's nifty. Maybe it's even just think of how you can leverage additional apps, think of how you can leverage, you know, run with, launch with, and just cool ways to try to, you know, interpret your own builds, I guess. So with that here, I'll go ahead and start winding down this video here. Yeah, I'll think of something else to probably make for the next video, and alright, well, keep in touch everyone. Bye!